Hello, everybody. It's Sunday night. We have just turned into Monday morning, but hey, we are here an hour earlier than we probably would have been under different circumstances.
Do we usually start at 1 for these?
Forbidden Door, we started around 1. Yes.
Nice. Okay, all right. Well, bright and early.
Bright and early. I'm all revved and ready to go.
Is that what they say?
That's what Dana White once said.
Revved and ready to go. Okay, yes. All right.
How are you, Way?
I'm good. Yeah. You don't have to ask me this. Like
Okay.
You're going on vacation tomorrow. I know you need to get your sleep in. Let's just get into it,
Okay. WrestleTix number 7082 at the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's AEW Redemption, a show that was here on the calendar to get us from one point to the next point. And in between, we got this show.
Yeah. Honestly, by the end of it, it didn't change my opinion about that. Going in felt like it would be that type of show, and coming out of it, it really felt like that type of show. And it's not to say like this can't work, like announcing a pay-per-view 4 weeks out from All In. I was curious to see what Tony would do to try to make this one feel that relevant. Now, of course, if it was MJF versus Kenny, title change occurs here to directly lead us to All In as was planned. That would accomplish that. They didn't do that. Well, they did it 2 weeks ahead. And therefore, I was curious to see what he would do to try to replace that, to add the relevance to the show. And I guess we can discuss what we felt like those attempts were.
I think it is a lesson in, as AEW expands their pay-per-views, they have an unbelievably deep roster. Like, certainly you looked at this show on paper. You knew you were going to get some great quality. This was hardly a show that you looked at on paper and was like, wow, this really looks thin. That was not the case. On a show where you had no MJF, no Swerve, Darby, Hangman, Takeshita, Okada. But those are all big stars. And I do think that does make a difference when it comes to people spending money. Like, let's remember, AEW, this is, unless you have my AEW, if you are, spending still the $40 or whatever for the pay-per-view, it is a higher bar to convince your consumer to buy. And typically it is going to be stars that are going to be a big part of that. And MJF has been a big component of these pay-per-views this year in meaningful matches. And I think you could look at this card. What were the meaningful matches? And I think that was the struggle here, to convince people that this was a worthwhile endeavor before the big show next month. And I think, and part of me thought that, okay, by Sunday night, there's going to be the contingent that will be saying, oh, everyone dogged this pay-per-view and look at what we got. And here we are. And while I have some stuff I was really high on, I also have stuff I was negative on. And I would say this was a step down from a lot of the AEW pay-per-views of recent memory for me as a whole.
For sure, it was the weakest one of the year.
I would say that again, pretty comfortably.
A big part of that conversation is due to the fact that this company is on the best run of pay-per-views that I think it's ever had. So it probably doesn't take a whole lot for it to be a step down. But I do think it was probably a several step down if I kind of have to be honest with my immediate reaction to it. And I guess we can get into the reasons why I may feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it more later, but I would ask the question of, it's not so much, can we program a pay-per-view every 4 weeks with this roster? That is without question. Can you make meaningful shows every 4 weeks that are going to compel your audience to continually pay for these shows, to engage with these shows? Or does it become that you create a tiered system where you are going to have fans that are going to pick and choose more than where it was every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks, there's a pay-per-view, and it becomes the must-see show if you're an AEW fan. And I think that's the more interesting question, is can you create a big hook every 4 weeks for these pay-per-views?
It's a challenge, yeah. And this was the show that would maybe put that to the test. Yeah.
The buy-in had basically two major segments on it. One match on the entire pre-show. We had Renee Paquette with Mick Foley. More on Mick Foley later. He would have one of his all-time segments later on in the show. Quite the interview.
Yeah.
And Jeff Jarrett, who is also here. But Daddy Magic, Matt Menard, comes out in his Expos jacket to host the Rougeau family celebration. 80 years of Rougeaus. Where, or should we call them the Boo-Joes? At least for one of them. So this segment, okay, I took great glee in this segment for various reasons, okay? Raymond comes out, and this is a big deal to Raymond. And folks, if you've ever worked in broadcasting, okay, and I've at least worked several live events and such, there's a cardinal rule. You never give up the microphone, okay? Because why? Because you are basically handing over the broadcast to a wild card. You don't know when that mic's going to come back. And Raymond was ready to give his life story in French. And he's just going on and on here in French. You're making out like he's thanking Tony Khan. He's thanking his father, Jacques Sr., his uncle Johnny, Eddie Auger gets a mention here. He's going through the family. And Menard thinks he's wrapping up, and he goes to get the mic. Raymond just turns the shoulder, and boom, we're just going to keep going here. It was the Iron Sheik at the Hall of Fame. He keeps going, and then you think he's ending because he took a breath. Now I'd like to say in English. I was like, oh my God, we're going to get the English translation now? He did keep the English portion a bit more brief. But folks, if you thought Jacques Rougeau was showing up at the Bell Center and he wasn't going to get his moment with the microphone, well, dude, he just grabs the mic from Raymond. He was not going to let it pivot to Matt Menard and a chance that Menard wraps this thing up. Jacques gets the mic. And dude, like Jacques, I know he does not have the greatest reputation, but I didn't know if it would really translate to like a wrestling audience where you've got 7,000 people here in Montreal, but the boos begin for Jacques, and it really does give you a bird's eye view of sort of how this man is viewed as a promoter, as an ex-wrestler, what his reputation is, because these boos start, and Jacques, being the old school veteran, you never sell it, right? Looks like we got some haters here. Well, you all can kiss my ass. Dude, I thought I was having a fever dream here. Here this guy is for his family celebration. He's getting catcalled, and he's telling the fans to kiss his ass. This is the most astounding tribute segment I've ever seen in wrestling.
So I suppose like it could be interpreted, at least like maybe if you ask I wonder if you asked him, because this man, at least like for his WWF run, was very much entirely a heel. Like how much of this was
not
just
in Montreal, dude. This guy was like the big hero here who once beat Hulk Hogan in this venue. I mean, this is not the crowd reacting to a heel character. I mean, Raymond was as much of a heel during his WWE run as Jacques would have been.
So what would you say are the reasons why the audience feels this way about him?
I mean, I think a Pat LaPrade could go into a lot more of the specifics. Certainly, you have heard like the stories of how he was very restrictive with a lot of his students. He's
Kevin Owen specifically.
Kevin Steen for sure being one of them, who's probably been the most vocal of his students. Ran a very restricted kind of system, and it goes beyond that. Like I think many people look at him as like this, manipulative promoter. That reputation has come through a lot. Jacques is all about Jacques Rougeau, but I thought that was maybe just limited to, I was not expecting this response, that he would end up getting booed, because it was instant. Like it was an eye opener to me of like where this guy's reputation is, that he got such a reaction like this. And then he just piles on here by acknowledging it. And so he just continues, and he's trying to get a Rougeau chant going. And then he says, I had a dream. And he has his phone. He pulls out his phone, and he gets the lights dimmed, and everyone puts their phone up to start singing Olay.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird dream.
I mean, just as I'm sure Jacques Sr., used to do traditionally in the 60s.
I had this dream after Johnny got into the Observer Hall of Fame. It was singing Olay in a 7,000-seat Bell Center attendance.
So listen, I don't know what sort of like rehearsals they have, like how much like discussion about what you're exactly going to do, but like this man was treating this like it was his Hall of Fame induction, right? Like this was like probably I don't know.
If you saw the media that they did in advance to this, like these two want the WWE invite for the Hall of Fame. It was very clear. They made it clear, hey, we're not doing anything against WWE. They asked us to do this. We would love to do the WWE Hall of Fame. We were just asked to do this. So they very much want the Hall of Fame invite from WWE.
So he had this like they both had this like big speech in mind, like along with the whole like Fireflies thing, just for what reason? I mean, just for the heck of it, and they had to get their shit in. So I mean, I don't know, like I don't know what you'd really expect out of like these segments. I mean, you would expect them to speak. I wonder if it was maybe said to a certain length, and they maybe went
I don't know if Jacques Rougeau expected to get the Donald Trump reaction at the WWE Hall of Fame.
That probably maybe he didn't expect. I wonder.
It's quite the segment. Rocky Romero comes out, and it's so funny because he's like, "Oh, you filthy Quebecers! I'm sick of you guys celebrating the Rougeau family, not realizing that he's this crowd is not celebrating. Well, at least not Jacques. They were very respectful to Raymond, but the only family in Canada that matters is the Don Callis family. Who no Don Callis on the show at all. I guess he was banned from ringside for the other matches, but he just gets swatted by Jacques, and they hold him. Raymond does the Rougeau karate kick. Unfortunately, we didn't get the flip over the top rope and the strut, but Rocky Romero just had to play ping pong ball for the 60-plus-year-old Rougeaus.
Yep. And that was it. Yeah.
Quite a segment, a memorable one to say the least.
Interesting that, I mean, so they've done this in the past, like they've done it with the Von Erichs, and like just to kind of maybe pay some respects to the history, and also
and sell some local tickets.
Exactly,
like that would have been the hook here for using the Rougeaus.
Yeah, so all of that fine. And I don't know. By the end of it, I felt it like rather inoffensive, like to me. If you're Jacques Rougeau, I wonder if you felt differently. But this in lieu of a match, because there was only one match on this particular buy.
I mean, this probably cut out like 3 matches, almost. Maybe. Like usually we get about 4 matches on these pre-shows. I was not complaining about the lack of matches on the pre-show.
And I don't know if this crowd would be either, because I don't know if they had that much energy to spare for an extra match.
Well, unfortunately, there was like a meter, okay? And they were going to use it judiciously, and most of it was going to be used for Speedball Mike Bailey. Probably thinking, Speedball's going to be late in the show.
Yeah, maybe.
The Conglomeration took on Jay Lethal, Blake Christian, and Lee Johnson for the trios belts with the demand on commentary. And Kyle eventually comes in. He puts an ankle lock on Lee Johnson. That's broken up by Lethal. I thought Christian and Lee Johnson were terrific together in this match. Just a lot of great double team spots. They're a really great tag team, the more that they get focused. Blake is mocking Orange Cassidy with his own hands in the pockets, and they just do these great double team sequences. Christian did this crazy Fosbury through the ropes instead of over the top, which looked great. Cassidy hits the satellite DDT to Jay Lethal, and then he goes for the orange punch, which Lethal catches into a lethal combination. Johnson gets caught with the title belt, and the lethal injection is hit. Roderick makes the save, and as Jay goes for another lethal injection, he's caught into a high-low by Strong and Kyle, ending with Strong hitting an end of heartache and tossing Cassidy on top of Lethal for the pin in 12 minutes. And the demand applaud, and they will be challenging the Conglomeration on Wednesday in Detroit for the trios belts. But I thought this was a very, very good trios match that they ended up having. I thought the lethal twist was very good in this match.
Yeah, and entertaining, fast-paced, action-heavy warm-up match, which I feel like at this point is what the trios championships are really kind of for, like just to warm up the crowd with strong action, maybe the occasional, collision main event. I thought the swirl in particular looked really good here, so it was really good to see the two of them get some added relevance with their addition here into the demand. So yeah, perfectly fine. Yeah.
And then Jacques came out with the shock stick, and he just took everybody out.
He really should have played the full gimmick. Maybe just a correction here. Don, thank you, chat room. Don Callis was a part of the Fletcher match, but only came in and out. between the entrances.
Oh, okay. He wasn't on commentary. I missed him.
Yep.
Okay.
Second thing here, no feedback for this particular show, so you won't find a thread in the forum, and that's just simply because it's such a late show. But feel free to discuss it and let everybody know your thoughts in the forum.
The entrances begin for the ladder match to close off the buy-in, and that's how we're starting off the pay-per-view with the Beast Mortos, El Clone, Jack Perry, Nick Wayne, Commander, and Speedball Mike Bailey, who was a giant babyface on this show in front of this crowd. He got one of the biggest reactions this guy has ever received, probably the biggest.
As you would expect, right? You know, the one person from Montreal in the actual match, like wrestling in a match itself, or at least as part of the active roster, he's somebody who is probably of the most prominent position on like certainly on this roster he's ever been at. And again, I think rather disappointing that we didn't have more focus on him in the build up to this, because I thought he would have been, this reaction might have been that much even bigger, you know, had you had more story.
With the way everything went in these matches, would there have been an argument of, because they did tease this on television for several weeks as well about challenging of doing Omega and Speedball on this show, strictly because of the location. Like in either case, you have a challenger that is like a 0% chance of winning. Do you just go with like the friendly between these two? And
if it was a TV, yeah, for pay-per-view, I mean, we had already discussed maybe reasons for picking Knight by, you know, like essentially using the spot to invest in him, right? They have those plans for Knight to be a future bona fide main eventer. They don't seem to really have that for Speedball. So both of them, I think, would have been a bit tougher. Locally, this would have maybe done better if it was Speedball Omega, but I don't know if you have the investment in there.
So the match begins, and Perry also got a pretty big reaction coming out here. So Mortos early on press slams Bailey onto a ladder on the corner, and then Mortos sends El Clone into Wayne and Commander for a double DDT. The crowd is all chanting Speedball as he hits a top rope Asai to the floor. They move up to the entranceway, and Bailey climbs this giant ladder and moonsaults off of it. So then Perry climbs it, but not to the top that Bailey had just done it, and he does his own moonsault. It's kind of anticlimactic after the bigger one from Bailey.
Yeah, I don't know what the positioning, like why they maybe did those two spots in that sort of order. Like you kind of saved the big one for the hometown guy, right? When Perry did the same move,
Perry should have gone first, and then Bailey climbs right to the top and does it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, great, like you know, cool,
real ladder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a Wayne's World delivered to Bailey on the edge. Wayne had some big spots in this match. Perry climbs, and Mortos pulls him down, presses him to the floor, and then Commander, who was one of the stars of this match, does his rope walk, drop kicks Mortos off the ladder from the rope walk. All six end up on the ladders in the middle. Mortos is left on his own, but he can't climb. He's holding on to the knee, and it's Perry with a Rana off of the edge as Mortos then just bounces off this table on the floor. This was the one table on the whole show that did not break. Clone hits a foot stomp, putting Bailey through a table on the floor, and then Commander does his rope walk into the twisting splash to Nick Wayne on a table on the floor. This was insane.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really crazy.
Commander and Clone end up on a ladder bridge, and Clone sends him off. Wayne then climbs and hits a Phoenix splash to Clone through a table. As Nigel notes, another homage to Christian Cage. This Phoenix splash off to the ladder. Perry and Wayne are on the main ladder, with Perry hitting a Canadian destroyer. Bailey is alone, and the fans just come unglued. When Mortos enters, he takes out Mortos with an Ultima weapon on a ladder and then climbs. The crowd is going nuts as he grabs the contract. Huge pop at 19 minutes and 40 seconds. And we will get Speedball Mike Bailey, challenging for the title at Arena Mexico a week from Wednesday.
It was a really fun car crash match with, I would say, very well planned and very well executed spots. And of course, it made for a very fan-friendly moment for the hometown guy. And, you know, if, like, I suspect the plan may have been for Speedball to be Kevin Knight's opponent on this particular show. In lieu of that, I thought they created a really nice moment for Speedball anyway through something like this. I think in hindsight, like, this might have served the card better if it had taken place later on, because this was bound to, like, wake people up at some point in the middle of the show when I think it really could have used it. Whereas, like, early on, these crowds were probably going to be plenty loud anyway. But I mean, you can't get mad at this. I thought it was a very entertaining match.
I don't think you can overstate how important it is to have a Montreal star for your wrestling promotion in running this city that they just gravitate to in such a gigantic way that it's a difference maker when you run the city. And AEW, they ran back-to-back shows, and that was like 2.5 years ago at this point, and then came back for this one.
Yeah.
They have not done great in Montreal. Like, I would not call 7,000 in Montreal a great attendance for such a hot wrestling city, but that's part of the formula, is having that star. And, Bailey is the best example they have, but he's not that top star yet. So then they follow with, and this was earlier than I thought, but once again, we get the Bucks in the second pay-per-view match of the show, taking on Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay. So they do the spot near the beginning where Nick and Ospreay clunk heads, and we tease a concussion for Nick throughout the match because he's got to go. He's got to regroup on the floor, and Matt is left to go it alone here. Will clearly having the stronger head of the two because he seemed fine.
I mean, the brains are designed differently. In a car crash, maybe one, car gets completely destroyed. The other is perfectly fine. You can never really tell. Yeah.
So Ospreay has Rick Knox go to check on Nick, and Moxley doesn't want Ospreay to take his foot off the gas, and Matt has to fight on his own. Even Shafir is getting involved here, so it's almost like 3-on-1 against Matt. Moxley hits a pile driver to Nick on the floor to show how he has no sympathy for this man. Let his head fall off. And minutes later, Nick hops onto the apron and he insists being tagged in and telling Matt that he's fine. Nigel suggests that perhaps the Bucks can now get back into full gear, to which Excalibur responds, "That's in November." And Ospreay interrupts a Meltzer driver, catching Nick for a Styles clash, while at the same time Moxley pile drives Matt. And you have Matt escaping a choke. This was an incredible sequence. Matt is in this choke by Moxley, and he rolls back as Nick hits a 450 to Moxley. Then Will hits the 450 on Nick. Matt connects with a destroyer to Ospreay, and then they deliver a BTE trigger onto Moxley with Ospreay saving with the hidden blade. This was just boom, 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 and they just hit everything. It was quite the sequence of spots. Nick starts to stumble around. He's selling the head injury, and Ospreay starts striking him near the head with kicks and forearms. But then when he's got the back turned, Ospreay can't pull the trigger and deliver the ground and pound like he did to Adam Brooks recently and what Moxley has taught him. And Matt comes in. He's trying to shield his brother. So Moxley tosses Matt out, and he starts curb stomping Nick that you pull the trigger when you've got the chance. And he puts on the bulldog choke, and then he starts administering the ground and pound, and Ospreay is conflicted by this. Matt comes in to save with the super kick, and Ospreay pulls him out and super kicks Shafir, missing Ospreay. So Shafir is taken out. And we see the paradigm shift delivered to Nick twice in a row. The crowd is booing this. He hits a Death Rider and then gets a chair, which knocks down Knox. And Ospreay stops Moxley from using the chair. Matt super kicks the chair into him, and they hit a BTE trigger onto Moxley. And then it's with Moxley on his knees, they just go machine gun super kicks to Moxley and just pounce him with these super kicks. And the Bucks, Matt pins Moxley in a match that went 19 minutes and 40 seconds all told.
I thought it was an excellent match, and I think, like, in hindsight, my match of the show. I think I could say, like, I don't know if this sort of, like, melodramatic, like, professional wrestling style in some of these, like, Bucks matches are for everybody. I happen to love them, and this to me, maybe not on the level of like Golden Lovers Bucks or like Page and Omega versus Bucks, but I would put it in that realm, in that it's not just an incredibly athletic match from the Bucks, but one that was very much steeped in storytelling. And I thought they did a great job of building those moments of internal conflict for Will Ospreay through having him hold back from hitting Nick in the head to further this concussion storyline that they were selling. In the end, of course they could have like had him hold the championship and decide whether or not to use it. But this was a little bit more, I think, creative and inventive than that.
What about the hands? Should Will have looked at his hands?
what about a plastic bag? Okay, that is
that's ridiculous.
Later in the evening.
Let's not get silly.
Yeah, but like these matches to me are always like very entertaining because they're relatively simple and easy to follow. They make the story so obvious that like I think everybody watching live or at home, even if you're not like completely zoned in on the story or intricate little movements, you can get into it, and they make them compelling and fun. So.
And Nick was able to pass concussion protocol within about 2 hours before his match in London was confirmed. So
that was, I would say, certainly a nitpick. Like, why, we've seen doctors check on guys for much less. Like, if we're talking about a man suffering from this level of concussion symptom, like, why was Knox so sort of reluctant to check on him? And why wasn't the doctor there for a spot?
Maybe Nick went and saw Saray's doctor in Japan. Like, you're fine.
Sure.
You're fine.
Maybe.
Don't worry about it. It was a great match. I thought, really, I think everyone was very hot. These first 3 matches on the pay-per-view were, I think, like everyone's kind of apex of the show. And that's followed by Kyle Fletcher and Bandido for the international title. And do you know why this was so significant?
What's that?
Excalibur explained, this is the first time Kyle Fletcher has worn full-length boots.
You know what? Mark it in the calendar. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Everyone can remember this date. Well, he worked these boots in well. He got them certainly accustomed to a big pay-per-view championship match. So we've seen in the past the cabrata where the guy gets super kicked upside down. I don't think we have ever seen one where it's an Ospreay moonsault to the floor, which is what Bandido did and got super kicked coming down to the floor. This was totally nuts. I rewound this like twice to watch this thing. It was insane.
It looked amazing. Yeah.
Bandido, like every time he just gets this crowd going, they're chanting for him. Fletcher hit a brain buster on the edge of the apron, and you can literally hear this kid who's like giving him these words of encouragement to get up if Bandido grabs his kid. It was the second best involvement of a kid on this show, next to the pyromaniac that we'd get in the Ciampa match.
This kid says, "You can do it," and Bandido goes over and puts his head towards, like, taps his head on the kid's head. It was like incredibly corny, but also like awesome. Yeah, great.
Go get him, champ.
Yeah.
So we see, man, they came up with these such cool setups for the 21 plex. He's got a full Nelson on Fletcher, and he tries to rotate Bandido into the ropes and turns this into a 21 Dragonplex. This was so awesome, and got a 2 count. Had this not been like less than 10 minutes into the match, I would have bought this on the finish. It was so clever. He tries for a code red to the floor, but Kyle holds on to the rope and ends up with a power bomb being delivered to the floor. And then Bandido morphs into Cavanario here with a frog splash off the top to the floor, just doing irreparable damage to his knees here, but entertaining them nonetheless. Goes for the shooting star press, gets a 2 count, and then a huge, giant spinning DDT in the air by Bandido, who's just on fire here. Then they decide to get on all fours and just start headbutting one another. Now, I found it very notable that this crowd was going nuts. Silence for these goddamn headbutts, which they continued them and busted open Kyle's head here. He was actually bleeding from one of these. Fall-away moonsault off the top is hit by Bandido, and then the X-knee lands, hits the 21 plex, but Kyle gets the shoulder up. He hits his own knee smash and a brain buster for a 2. The crowd is just stunned that he survives this brain buster. And then Fletcher escalates, Michinoku driver off the second turnbuckle, lawn darts him into the corner, and then a brain buster. He aims for the top turnbuckle, but he misses, and Bandido hits the second turnbuckle, and that is the end here, as Kyle Fletcher wins 26 minutes and 20 seconds that these two ended up going. Wow. This edged out the other 2 for my match of the show, but these 3 were just incredible matches to start the pay-per-view.
Yeah, an excellent match. I mean, but to me, the believability of a title change not necessarily there. Although of course it could happen. Upsets do happen, as they did happen on this show. But heading into it, especially like with Bandido's sort of like role right now in AEW as just kind of the guy you put on a pay-per-view without that much build, he's just like, he's known for having a great match. He's probably not going to win, but he's going to have a great match. So really, this match to me was never really sold on like the title change. It was more so just sold on the action, and the action was top notch. Great looking moves from both men, dangerous looking moves from both men. The variety of like, spectacle that you got, especially from Bandido, I think continues to really impress. Fletcher's heel presence throughout feels very strong. Like already, this has been the case for a while, but it very much feels world championship level ready. So yeah,
and the boots.
Well, he's that really was the final thing he needed. Boots.
Knowing where they were going. The one thing I would have done differently was Speedball wins and Lexi or someone interviews him in the middle of the ring where the crowd's going nuts. Yeah. And he says, I'm challenging the winner for Grand Slam Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I think that would have put it even more over the top that maybe Bandido will win this one if they're doing it at Arena Mexico. Okay. And I think that would have just, it would have given, I think, a degree more of believability of a different outcome here. But regardless, an excellent match. And I think like these three matches were really, really solid. Like we were off to a great start here. The double chain match, Jay White and Juice Robinson, the only Juice represented in this match, taking on David Finlay and Clark Connors. And the Dogs attack before the bell. And it took all of like 10 seconds for Nigel McGuinness to ask, who let the dogs out? And I thought, what a dated call, but they had to go there. But then we hear members of the crowd starting to sing this. They were actually singing this.
Yeah, poorly. So, I mean, you can argue that like the Baja Men sing it poorly, but that's I don't know if there's a good way to sing, who let the dogs out. But I mean,
this song has lasted more than a quarter of a century is a remarkable feat for the Baja Men.
But who let the dogs out or Whoop There It Is? Which one do you prefer?
I guess Who Let the Dogs Out.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You not so much.
It's I'll have to really think about it. Yeah.
White had an interesting look here. He was in white pants and cowboy boots. And I thought based on the pant selection that this guy was going to look like a horror victim by the end of this. Little did I know. Anyway, we'll get into that more. White, it just starts whipping Connors with the chain. And that's what a lot of this was. Guys just whipping each other with this chain. And White eventually misses. He whips the post, injuring his hand, and gets powerbombed into the post. Juice gets tied up in the corner, and he's right next to Clark Connors' box of matches. And I was like, is this a tease for something? It was not. The left hand of God is attempted by Juice, but Connors flinched and turns into a DDT by Jay White. Connors then starts choking Juice with the chain. He's about to die when White overpowers Finlay with the other chain and saves Juice. This crowd was like, let's just say they were absorbing the intensity and left to observe. Tony Schiavone, the most political man on this commentary booth, called this a tactically fascinating match, which I don't know. When you hear double chain match, you think, man, that's going to be so tactically fascinating. Tactically, it's going to be great.
Yeah. It ended up being that, certainly. No thanks to the fact that like there were two chains, and
not
therefore, and therefore these things kept getting tangled because they were doing spots around each other.
It's like having two skipping ropes and you're doing like the double dutch. It's like, it's tough.
They had to untangle themselves like awkwardly at several parts of the match. So yeah, it ended up being tactical just because you had to figure out how to untangle yourself.
Eventually, Garcia and Yuta show up for one of their many cameos on their show, attacking Jay White. This brings out Ace Austin and the Guns to fight them off. Then Shafir shows up with the shillelagh, which I thought had been stolen from Finlay. I guess he got it back. And
he's got a closet full of those.
Or maybe Shafir wrestled it back. And he nails Juice with the shillelagh, and they win. And all I could say is at the end of this one, I don't know why this was a chain match. Like, when you say chain match in AEW, like, if you're not doing blood, this made no sense to me. And what I think was even worse was that, like, I think the crowd was waiting for this one to get really violent and gory. And It was violent in the sense they were whipping each other with these chains. I bet these guys are all going to feel this, but the audience certainly didn't feel this. And I just found it to be a really confusing match. And my only conclusion I can make is if they felt that they were going to save they didn't want to overdo the blood with the Jericho Ciampa stuff. Like, because I have no reason why you would make this a chain match if you were going to lay out a match like this.
No, well, they're dogs, and therefore dog collar, John. You know, that's it. I mean, as a spectacle for a pay-per-view to bill for a pay-per-view, I think it was a fine idea, but you kind of have to deliver on that in execution, and I don't think they did at all. The least I think you would expect out of a match like this is blood and some sort of visual spectacle attached to it. This didn't have that. And as far as like the actual match goes, I thought the stipulation ended up being more of a handicap than something that accentuated the heat in this match. Like most of this match was just like whipping each other with the chain, which I'm sure hurt like shit.
Oh,
but
I'm sure these guys went through hell in this match. Like, probably worse than some of the ladder match guys of the spots that they took, but it was just like
it didn't connect. Like it didn't look that bad, or at least like it didn't look as bad as it probably felt. You know,
it's not visual pain that the audience is going to like elicit like reactions for.
So it became that sort of brawl with like a lot of whipping, stomping, the occasional choking, and honestly, like I didn't think there was anything all that interesting or big enough for me to like react to, nor for certainly this crowd to react to, because this was like definitely like the bigger drop off of the entire show. From this point on, I thought like this was a really struggling crowd. Reactions were not great for it, and
let's also add 19 minutes and 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think a lot of these matches could have been cut. Bandido versus Fletcher, as good as it was, didn't need to go like
this was the epitome
minutes.
of just like being served like a steak dinner one after the other. Like, dude, listen to these matches, like 1940, 26 and a half, 19, 16 and a half, 18 and a half, 23, 16, 17.
At that point, it's just you're kind of being indulgent. Of course, there's like a fine line between like delivering, I think, a satisfying match. There's certainly too short when it comes to, you know, like the type of match you want to deliver on pay-per-view, but I don't know, these were verging on, I think, a little long, especially with some of these crowd reactions. I forget, did you mention the Jay White Dominator? The Dominator on Jay White that Finley delivered here.
Yes.
It was way too close, you know, like they narrowly avoided tragedy, like it looked like with that the angle at which Jay White landed on his face and top of his head. So I don't, you know, like they seem to point towards the chain as maybe being the culprit for maybe the misstep or something, but like I never want to see that happen again.
Backstage, Renee is with Will Ospreay and asks him about Nick Jackson, and Will mentions he's got a history of head trauma and he didn't want to act on that. So Moxley walks in, he's upset. Ospreay says, Ospreay explains, I'm not trying to kill anybody out there. Moxley has no sympathy for Nick, and that Wembley is not just some other match for him. You get one chance to catch the wave. There are no friends at the top, and you can't turn your back on anyone. And he doesn't want to be there when you learn the hard way. And if you won't pull the trigger, I will. So a tease of what was to come later on.
Yeah. I continue to be very intrigued by, you know, Moxley's involvement in Ospreay versus Kenny. Even after the events of tonight, I think you still expect plenty, you know, between him and Kenny and Ospreay and beyond, all in. You know, like they are building, of course, the Kenny versus Omega, but All Out is not that far away, and you know, you're already setting potentially that main event right now.
I thought this match would be well down the road, and I feel this one's coming a lot closer. All Out would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Mox continues to be just doing absolutely fantastic work. Both of these two, I think they're great on screen together.
Hikaru Shida, Meyer World for the TBS Championship. So this match I thought had some struggles. A lot of, like, if you were watching like several of the transitions, they were just really like mechanical and like some struggle in like setting up just like some basic stuff. And I felt, quite frankly, like this was a fairly cold match going into this, minus, of course, the kendo stick being taken away. So Shida gets her in this stretch muffler on the buckle, and that would set up Maya basically selling her right knee throughout most of the match and having to offset it by just balancing on the other leg. She does she escapes a half crab and would hit a shining wizard both to the back and the front. And then Shida rolls to the floor, which gets boos from the crowds. And she gets her kendo stick. I'm like, when did she get the kendo stick back? Did everyone just get their weapons back over the last couple of days that we missed? I thought this was like the only storyline was, I took your kendo stick, now I'm going to take your title.
I mean, it's not like it's the only kendo stick that exists.
Well, that was not the response. Then why was Maya touting this as this big capture?
Maybe it's to say, hey, I could take this from you, and I could take that from you as well.
She should have like patented it as her weapon, and Hikaru would have to find a new weapon of choice.
A hockey stick, maybe.
Yeah, or a Fat Boy
I don't
Slim
think she
song.
could use that either. No.
Maya goes for this moonsault, and she overshoots Shida, but Shida still puts her knees up, and Maya still sold this like she landed on the knees, and she takes the katana, and then a cutthroat tombstone, which is like the tombstone, but you slit your throat, and then applies the TBS lock, which sounds like
have to rename it.
Yeah, that sounds like a stipulation in like a programmer's contract. Oh, TBS we got to get around the TBS lock. That's what Fusion Media had to deal with. And she holds the arm to prevent the I wrote here to prevent the tag. That doesn't make any sense. I was just in a fog here. She
holds the arm to prevent the tap.
The tap. That's what we're going for here. It's late. Multiple knee strikes from Hikaru, and then Paul Turner, holds her back, our favorite spot. Doesn't end the match by TKO. Instead, Shida shoves Turner and hits a Falcon Arrow, but Maya grabs the rope. And Shida then grabs Turner again, turns around into Maya's fall-away bridging suplex for the pinfall out of nowhere. And to me, like it was the ending that really took this match and gave the crowd something, because it just felt like this match was going for a long time.
And she wins. We should maybe finish the recap.
Yeah, for the upset.
Yeah, did you say that?
I think I did.
I thought you just said she hit the move, and I don't know if the actual maybe
Maya World pinned her and won the TBS championship, and the crowd erupted for the title change. And they mentioned it's her 24th birthday today as the pyro went off here.
Yeah.
Younger than Julia Hart, by the way.
She is younger than the shining wizard that she employs,
That's right. Folks, she was born in 2002.
It's incredible. Yeah. Shock title switch. So a shock title switch I enjoy from time to time. And I certainly like it for this night on a show that I think was like struggling for relevance anyway. You want to come out of it like just maybe with some of these moments. So
it was out of nowhere for this crowd. And this was, I don't think this match would have been talked about highly had Shida just retained it here.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I mean, she is put into this position, you can argue, before she's actually ready for it. And it's like she hasn't really had the climb up and the type of exposure and the type of like high pressure situations to maybe like, like grind somebody into somebody who feels ready, you can argue, for even a TBS title role. But I do think like there's momentum with her, and this seems to be maybe one of their attempts to cement her at this level, and hopefully she'll have to learn quick, in the spotlight now in order to gain it. I thought certainly the match again suffered from a lack of heat because there was a lack of build for the match. She did well though, Maya World. I thought she sold the knee well overall, and of course like could use a lot more polishing, but for her level, like I thought she did well enough. And I also don't think the TBS title is like so precious currently that like Shida loses that much from not having it.
Do you think they still continue with something with Athena, with Maya?
You would think so, yeah.
They made such a big deal about that when she lost the match to Mercedes and immediately cut to Athena, and like certainly it feels like they're going to get to that match.
Well, doesn't this tell you Maya World would be on All In, or do you expect her to lose the championship before that?
I would think Maya gets a match at All In, and maybe it's with Athena. Maybe
it could be. It could also be like, I don't know, like a multi-person situation, like just to cram more people in.
They have Death Before Dishonor like a week before. But
that doesn't really seem like her role anymore. Like she's already won the TBS title, which is arguably more important than the ROH World Championship.
Yeah.
In their sort of hierarchy, so it doesn't feel that big anymore.
The Demand are in the back, and they congratulate the Conglomeration, and this is where they announced the Trios title match for Wednesday. Adam Copeland and Christian Cage against Claudio Castagnoli and Pac for the AEW tag titles. Copeland makes his entrance and then gets jumped by Pac and Claudio, who come out of the stands. Cage then runs down, and he gets laid out on the ramp. So the first portion of the match is all Copeland selling until Cage finally is able to make it to the apron and tag in, and he goes wild on Pac and Claudio. But eventually, the heels take over again, all of these double team spots. Claudio applies a sharpshooter, which gets heavily booed, and then releases it just to dropkick Copeland off of the apron. We see Pac with a shooting star press landing on Cage's knees, and then Claudio goes for the giant swing onto Cage, and Shivani just recaps that Cage and Copeland have gotten their asses kicked in this match. So Cage has to find a second life here, hits a kill switch out of nowhere, but Pac kicks out of that one and makes the tag to Copeland, who comes in. Copeland is setting up for the spear, but Pac leapfrogs, and they hit a spike neutralizer. Cage is in for the save at this point, and we get Pac running and caught in the Grindhouse. What's the better named submission? Death Ground or Grindhouse?
Or the TBS lock.
The TBS lock. That might take the cake, you're right. As Cage is holding on to Claudio, but he breaks free, saving Pac, and Cage and Copeland are put in opposite corners, and they're hitting dual running uppercuts into each corner until Cage spears Claudio and then presses Pac in the air for a big spear by Copeland to pin Pac and retain the championships. I know this is not going to be this won't maybe be everyone's cup of tea, but I thought technically this was very good. It was just like an old school tag match of like, get the heat on the baby faces. It went maybe too long at certain points in that because they did it with Copeland and they did it with Cage. But I really like this tag match. I thought this was one that it was, I was pretty satisfied with it, but it, again, is your mileage might vary based on your interest in this one going in. And it went 18 and a half minutes, by the way.
I suppose old school would be one way to describe it, but to me, I kind of maybe veered more on the side of feeling this was very standard and average. And I would say, like, you know, on a TV show, I think that would be expected, you know, like Cage and Cope like recently did in their TV title defense. I think that would be fine. But on an AEW pay-per-view, I would expect maybe a bit more specialness attached to like a performance like this, and I didn't really get that here. You know, I kind of just found it, you know, very you know, normal and standard, and therefore kind of forgettable, like including moments of like keeping Christian and Cope out for so long. I think those moments could have been like bigger with like the spots that justified why Cage was on the ramp for like 5 minutes, you know, following like what felt like a pretty like standard attack from Pac at the start of the match. Like those could have been spots for maybe something a bit more unique and bigger, you know, to maybe justify them being out for as long as they were. It was certainly a match where I felt like Pac and Claudio like looked great, and they look so great that you would think, why aren't they the champions? Why aren't they the ones being booked like in this role? Because
they're a great team.
They look legitimate. Whereas Cage and Cope, I have to say, unfortunately, like I think the nostalgia is certainly starting to wear thin for me. And in this match, like when you have a roster of young, hungry guys looking to take the next step up, and that's not even to say Claudio and Pac are those young guys, but you know they would still
blue chipper Claudio.
But the two of them are still at the very least people that I think are like in need of maybe that next level of like spotlight. And I understand you want to build a Cage and Cope versus the Bucks. That's the dream match. Completely think that match should take place. But I don't know if this experiment needs to continue that much longer. But beyond that, because I wouldn't be scrutinizing this much if they didn't have the championships. When you have an AEW championship, especially a part of like a tag division as celebrated as theirs, I think you have to do like a bit better than this, like honor pay-per-view with every outing.
Yeah, I was a lot higher on this. Like, I didn't need all like the bells and whistles attached to it. I still think that there's a place to just have like a match that is, you know, I just think with AEW shows, it's like a bare bones straight up match. I think that is going to struggle more with the audience at times. But we've also failed to acknowledge that based on that graphic, that Pac is dramatically morphing into Daga.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys with this sort of look. Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. There's Perros Del Mal represented here at Redemption. The Young Bucks come out afterwards, and they have a stare down with Copeland and Cage, and the graphic shows August 30th. Straight up, Copeland and Cage against the Young Bucks for the tag titles.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure like a lot of people would have expected multi-person, maybe even like some version of a TLC stipulation added to it. Do you expect any change to this graphic at this point?
Dude, listen, I enjoyed the match earlier. I'm really burnt out on ladder matches, and really I do not want to see Cage and Copeland doing another ladder. I don't think this match needs a ladder at this stage of their careers. I would rather see this without. And once, I had thought like this would be the Montreal match. I thought this was going to be the big match for Montreal, and then maybe you throw in an FTR or another team for, like, by this time next month, you probably will have the Machine Guns in here. The New Day could be here, but once they didn't do it in Montreal, like, it only makes sense you do this match first before you insert any other teams. So I don't really think this needs any additions. I don't think you need another team. I don't think you need a weapon. I think it's just being sold on like the dream match. And I think this probably is a good spot to have the Bucks regain the belts, because this tag division is going to have a lot of new teams coming out of the summer.
Yeah, I don't think it needs the addition of a third team. Like, just even narratively, like they were kind of hinting towards FTR at one point, but they seem completely kind of out of it. So unless like they do something with them in the few weeks ahead to justify it, I don't think it needs a third team. And especially like if you're not going to do TLC or any sort of ladder stipulation, adding a third team is sort of like prompts people into thinking that they're going to be doing some sort of weapon stipulation attached to it, right? So if you're not going to do that, then maybe a straight up match is perfectly fine. But I do think for something like All In a stadium, if you're going to go like Edge and Christian in a big stadium match, I think you would want something to feel extra special, right? And at the very least, I think, I know you're tired of it, but I think a ladder would be that sort of thing that would, I think, take it over the top and make it like the most dream match scenario of it all. But listen, they don't have to. They're plenty talented enough that I think they could create something incredible without it.
Now it's time for No Holds Barred.
Yeah.
Tommaso Ciampa and 55-year-old Chris Jericho. And tonight we are not getting Judas. Instead, out comes Jericho to Painkiller by Judas Priest,
which is his PAINMAKER theme song.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad they have this one on standby for his when was the last time he did the PAINMAKER deal?
Oh man, I don't remember now. But
he is introduced as the Japanese Terrifier, the pariah of the underworld. He is the Painmaker.
They also said he is undefeated. Okay, and does that really work? Like, is that how records work? You come up with a nickname and like a mask. You put a few streaks on your eyes, and all of a sudden you can have a brand new record separate from your like other record.
It's smart.
Okay,
hell of a gimmick. Right. He's probably the number one contender after tonight. Maybe he's going to get into that. He's going to take Ospreay's spot next month. So he comes out. He's in he's got his face paint he's wearing a mask on the way to the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was looking like a Damien here with the mask. And he has a barbed wire bat. So Ciampa gets a chair to start. And early on, Jericho hits a code breaker. And he grabs a bag. And there's sand. He throws the sand into the eyes. And my favorite response is Tony saying, "Remember Beach Break?" And Taz, like, this is the most brilliant analysis. "You're right." I've got it. I thought
I'll be honest. I kind of forgot about the finish of the Beach Break match. So I thought like this was kind of
you thought he was just randomly grabbing sand?
Well, the sand is tough in the eyes, okay? But like the connection to Beach Break, I thought was at least like.
Well, then I'm glad Shivani was able to tie it all together.
It was the finish. Yeah.
So then Jericho uses a fire extinguisher, and there is a fairy tale ending by Ciampa off the edge of the apron through a table, and you hear this one faint voice of a child yelling for fire in the background. And I was going to rewind it, but then all of a sudden I hear Excalibur saying, I know we often can't hear the voices of the fans, but there is a child behind me that is screaming for them to light the table on fire. And Taz's response is, well, it's Canada.
Yeah, because we love our burning tables here. Listen, I like maybe like fun to mention, but I don't know if like, you needed to call attention to the fact that like
it's quiet.
It's so quiet here. It's kind of unusual, but it's so quiet here. I could hear very clearly what the audience, like this person behind me, is saying.
But wait, this was tactically fascinating.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Ciampa pulls out a hockey stick, which was more over than speedball on this show. Like, hey, hockey, we like that sport. And he attacks Jericho with it. This gets a great reaction. He puts on a helmet and reveals a Bobby Orr Boston Bruins jersey. This does not get a positive response. And
this got the biggest heat for like the past hour of this show. Oh
man, Bobby Orr is the biggest heel in AEW.
It's Boston, but yes, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, he chose Orr here, so I mean, there's that too. He puts on the jersey and then gets attacked. He starts attacking the stuffed animal of Yuppie, the Montreal Canadiens mascot, and this guy,
formerly the Expos mascot as well.
Oh, okay. They just adopted the mascot.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's nice of them. That's how it works. When you go out of business, like you relocate, and the mascot is a free agent.
I mean, Yuppie is so beloved. I guess they had to pick him up, adopt him.
Well, so Ciampa's like pinning this fucking Yuppie. And Jericho saves it. And this
Yuppie, other than like, Yuppie was more over than Speedball.
Yuppie versus Kenny Omega. Like, had this been a DDT pay per view, we would have got Kenny against Yuppie, and I think I would have put a lot of faith into Kenny.
At least 4 stars, I think.
Probably. So Jericho then brings out hockey pucks, but not his regular hockey pucks. These ones are all full of tacks, which I could only imagine the time that this would have taken to the poor sucker in AEW production that had to design all these pucks and put tacks into them.
You know what? They deserve some credit. Yeah.
So we not only got the pucks with tacks, we also got sandpaper. Sandpaper. Yeah. You don't get enough sandpaper in pro wrestling. Just like a rigid piece of sandpaper to rip open a guy's flesh.
It was sandpaper with like the sort of like handle that you can hold on to
to rub it.
I thought that was great. Like, I mean, I'm sure it's been used before somewhere, but I don't recall it used that often. And I think like it has a similar effect to, say, a cheese grater, but I'm just, like, it looked, I thought, awesome. And I hope that there was a way that they could have worked this to like make it not be that
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Oh my God.
I think he just grinded his face here. So Ciampa is a bloody mess here. So the dog collar, I would have loved to have been watching the dog collar participants during this match. Jericho takes off the Orr jersey and throws it into the trash can, just like easy responses here. And he gets a barbed wire table.
It's nice to see that, like, despite being from the depths of hell and wherever, like, Jericho had, like, what did he call himself? The pariah of the underworld. Nice to see that he still has maybe love for the hometown hockey team.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Even in the depths of despair in the underworld, they care for Yuppie.
Yeah,
they've got not for the Bruins.
Yeah.
So he brings out a barbed wire table. Ciampa then grinds one of the pucks into Jericho's forehead, and we see a close-up where one of these tacks is just lodged in Jericho's forehead, and it's just stuck there. Ciampa brings out an elbow pad full of tacks, which would be used later, and they go onto the edge of the apron, and dude, Jericho hits a Death Valley driver to Ciampa through the barbed wire table. And, I mean, this was, like... I don't care what you want to say about the character and stuff. Watching like a 55-year-old put him through like this type of a match was like, it was pretty insane. Like, this was a very violent match. Jericho just grabs this object and he starts shanking the dude. Tony's like, I think it's a pencil. We never really got that strong of an identification on what this was, but he just stabbed this guy multiple times throughout this match.
Pencil or pen? I mean, wouldn't the effect be very
knife,
similar?
Whatever. It's something.
It's sharp.
Taz had a great line here as Ciampa's just bleeding to death. He says he looks like he just went through a blender. And Jericho then finds a mirror, and he stares at this mirror, and he places the mirror onto 2 chairs, creating a bridge in the ring. And he was going to go for like a Frankensteiner off the turnbuckle. Didn't know how that one was really going to work out. So he was low blowed, and Ciampa hits an air raid crash through this mirror as the glass just breaks. And I was pretty confident this looked like, cue the Jack Perry line, because Jericho's back looked like it had just been shredded to hell from this spot as they showed the close-up here. Holy Christ. And of course, Ciampa gets the power drill. Bro, we are going to Montreal, and we need the power drill. And yes, folks, after all of these years, we have once again recreated the Montreal screw job.
Oh, very nice.
The crowd starts chanting, "This is murder." And Jericho saves his life via the green mist. So
yeah, he could do that. I picked that up in Japan.
Yes. Maya World probably also trying to learn, where did this green mist come from? You mean Kabuki or Muda? Who are these people? Also born before.
I'm sure she knows her history.
And then he hits a Judas effect. Ciampa kicks out of the Judas effect. And then Jericho gets a barbed wire mirror. Yes, folks, a barbed wire mirror. And breaks it over Ciampa, then gets the elbow pad with the thumbtacks, goes for another Judas effect, and Ciampa kicks out of this. So finally, Jericho gets the power drill, and he goes to drill the forehead of Ciampa, and this is when the bell rings. Presumably, this was Ciampa giving up at this point. And look at this visual. And Jericho grabs Yuppie at the end of this. 23 minutes that this one went. I imagine there's many varying thoughts on this match, but I will just say this, like, Jericho could get by on a lot more or a lot less than doing this. And I will give credit that, like, he did a lot of violent stuff in this. Like, this is not a guy that is just coasting in these matches or relying on the opponent to do all the heavy lifting and stuff. Like, he really put himself through the grinder in this match, as did Ciampa.
Yeah. I liked the match straight up, going into it. I do think I think
the negativity is on the Painmaker. I don't think it's going to be on this match isolated.
I think Jericho maybe thinks of the character transformation being a lot more significant than I think it truly in effect feels. It honestly just it doesn't feel like a complete character transformation, and seeing Jericho do sort of dark and spooky, I just kind of doesn't work, at least not in this incarnation. But the match itself, this was it felt it evokes sort of the expectation that this would be a hardcore match or a death match, several notches above what you may get from a typical Chris Jericho hardcore or death match, or just AEW television hardcore death match, and they achieved that. It felt worthy, this match, of the alter ego billing that they attached to it. And I mean, so much of that is because of what Jericho and Ciampa poured into it. Jericho especially, again, you should really credit for, because he's putting through his body through so much, and he's not young. But he continues to, I think, work really hard, both creatively and also physically, in order to try to make these performances feel special. Not to say I wanted this out of Cage and Cope, but there was a level of specialness to this that I felt was certainly worthy of a pay-per-view and worthy.
What if the three of them become the Painmakers?
You know what? That would be a dream. They can all do hockey spots.
Yes,
but there was I mean, I found it very entertaining, and the danger was there, and the violence was achieved.
It was everything the dog collar match kind of promised, but didn't deliver any of that. This one got to be the big violent spectacle of the show, and I think one of these on a pay-per-view is kind of semi-expected, or at least one of those wild, chaotic matches.
On AEW pay-per-views, though, I expect 3 of those, and I don't think anything would be hurt by it. Okay, fine. Would seeing blood on the dog collar match have maybe taken a little bit of the sting out of the Ciampa one? Maybe a bit, but I don't think
it was literally
my
best guess. I don't know if that was the case, because I just don't know how.
Why else would you not have blood for a dog collar match with guys whipping each other over the head with a steel chain?
It makes no sense.
I don't know. We don't know. It could have been somebody.
It could have just been a tornado tag if that was going to be the type of match then.
Anyway, yeah, but this is a strong match, and like I don't know how others may have felt about like the Ciampa Jericho feud, but I do think like by the end of the feud, Jericho to me continues to endear himself to the audience in a positive light because I thought of this very strong performance.
What if instead of they blow off this with instead of the I quit an I quit stipulation, it's a Tommy's mommy. He's got to scream. Maybe that's what he should have screamed at the end of this one.
Yeah.
Oh, backstage, this was the most surreal segment on the whole show. Mick Foley interviews Divine Dominion, and they ask Mick Foley to sit down. So he's seated as they tower over top of him, and they ask him a series of questions, beginning with, have you ever seen two more dominant women? And Mick Foley has to think about it, and he says, maybe the Crush Gals when Chigusa, and they cut him off. And I laughed out loud at his response. It was well delivered. So then they keep asking him questions. They explain that they are undefeated, but there's no one left to face them. So Foley mentions you have not beaten the Brawling Birds, and maybe they'll have a shot against you. And they tell him to bow down to us. So Mick Foley starts barking like a dog for an uncomfortable amount of time. This was the most awkward I've felt seeing a barking on a pro wrestling show since Trish Stratus. And this felt like, I don't know, you tell me, this kind of felt like a fetish video. Like the whole like sit down. Have you ever seen anyone more dominant than us? Bark like a dog. I don't know. This was just a weird fucking video, dude. It felt like it was made for to try a new YouTube strategy.
I'm sure this video is already doing really well on YouTube, and I look forward to.
Well, in that case, what a win that this segment was.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing like in all of these, they're just looking for something to make it interesting, and maybe with this one, maybe there's some thought into like I don't know, like Foley actually being a pretty tall person, and maybe wanting to show the like these two are tall.
I think it's to start a whole Mick Foley fan fiction phenomenon for AEW Online.
But I mean, it was certainly weird. It was kind of kinky, and if you're into that, then awesome. But it was certainly not the role I imagined for Mick Foley in this company, and I don't know, man. Like he had a great debut with MJF, and then just in successive weeks, you know, the Willow thing was okay. But I don't know, man. I don't know if I like this for Mick Foley.
It was a pretty odd segment. I was trying to think of like the different pay-per-view names that might have lent to the like maybe Forbidden Door. I don't know. Never mind. Mark Davis and Andrade El Ídolo for the national championship. Andrade comes out with a group of women, and he immediately hits the spinning elbow. And I was like, I'm sorry, AEW, you cannot convince me you are doing forget a sub 30-second match. You can't convince me you're doing a sub 15-minute match, and they would not on this particular one.
Tony Khan would never book a Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan.
There's no way. There is no way. That one's getting 20 regardless. So Davis takes over for a long time. He's attacking the knee of Andrade. Andrade managed the Three Amigos, so that got an Eddie chant, but this one really struggled to have a reaction, and that's even with Andrade being really over to this crowd, but only when he would actively cheerlead the crowd. There's a pile driver onto the edge of the apron, which is countered by Andrade, sending Davis, who pretty much had to like leapfrog and stumble into the turnbuckle. Andrade hit a moonsault off the top of the post to the floor, which is pretty impressive. And then he calls for the pants to come off, but as Taz notes, he doesn't have those Velcro gimmicks, and he's having a wrestling match with his pants. This was quite the struggle to get these pants off through his boots. Definitely needs the Velcro gimmicks. And Davis gets his knees up on a frog splash, but then eats another spinning elbow, followed by the DM. And like the Maya World match, the title switch got the big pop at the end. But this one went 16 minutes and 15 seconds, and I just thought it was a real struggle with this crowd.
Agreed. I mean, the match, again, suffered from a lack of energy. The action was still very strong, but, I mean, you don't watch wrestling on mute, right? You know, and by this point in the show with this audience, I overall kind of felt the show had a bit of a sluggish, you know, like feeling attached to it. And, you know, like certainly by this point, what was this, like 10:30? Like this crowd seemed like they're at the point where they're ready to see the actual matches that they wanted to see.
This is the kind of like I'm just looking at these match times, and not to say it's like you can't ever do this, but there is something to be said of just switching up the rhythm and having that feel like a match can end at, like, these guys could have had a hot 9 minutes, and I don't think anyone would have complained about that.
Talking about 9 as if it's like a short match, but okay,
well,
yes,
it's shorter than 16 and a half, which is what this one went, and did not need to go that long this late in the show.
I do wonder if, like, you know, if you put one of like that ladder match here, if that would have fared a lot differently, and you know, conversely, if this was earlier on in the show, I'm sure it would have like benefited from it a little bit more. But you can certainly say, like, in watching a match like this, I think Andrade's charisma still continues to really come across. I think he's really clicking. And while I love Mark Davis, and I mean, the title feels more prominent on Andrade right now.
And probably, I'm sure he'll have a big match for Grand Slam Mexico as champion instead of going for the title. Lexi Nair interviewed Mike Bailey. He congratulates Andrade and calls this the best night of his life. He lived a dream. This is the arena he's been attending since he was a young child, and calls for his international title shot at Grand Slam Mexico. He's 1-1 with Kyle Fletcher and beat him in the Continental Classic last year, and will face him August the 5th, which should be one hell of a TV match, as their last two were incredible matches. Yeah.
I great interview. I mean, I'm also just thinking, man, wouldn't that match have been great if it took place here, like Fletcher versus?
I was Speedball. Ready to say this should have closed the show.
Oh man, like, instead of like a random Fletcher versus Bandido match that, like, I mean, wasn't really like that built to, like, why didn't you do Speedball versus Fletcher anyway? The interview was great. I think almost as valuable as like the win itself, in, like, you know, really giving some presence to Speedball. I mean, I don't think. Do you think he'll win the championship? Like, I guess not.
I don't think so,
because of Okada and Takeshita, right, waiting. But it made for a nice moment tonight.
Thekla and Willow Nightingale for the AEW Women's Championship. I will say, like, I was really looking forward to this, and it did feel like the crowd had an extra energy at the start of this. Like, this was one that it had some significance to it, and it was also one where, like, they were really into Thekla as well, as much as Willow from this crowd. Like, she has really done a great job of getting herself over. A pounce immediately sends Thekla to the floor, and then Willow misses a cannonball going into the steps, and they point out that in their brawl on Wednesday, that Willow required stitches in her ear. So Thekla works on the ear, which is bleeding through the bandage. And we just do not get enough working over the ear stories in pro wrestling matches.
No, not at all. It was somewhat like, you know, I think coincidental in that Mick Foley happened to be a part of that segment. So you had a great sort of like a backstage segment that they put online of Willow getting her stitches with Mick Foley right there.
Yeah. Maybe Mick Foley was like recording this like for people with like ear fetishes.
Like, is that his thing now?
I don't know. That's okay. I'm trying to decipher this Mick Foley presentation. Mercedes is showing she was in the building and watching. Thekla starts biting the ear and takes over until she gets run over with a lariat, but manages a Muda lock and starts fish hooking Willow. Willow gets
her
the
Muda
rope.
lock is really cool in that, like, she does the bridge and then does the spider walk over to grab, like, she does like sort of like a quarter circle walk, you know, to grab the face lock. It's pretty cool.
It's the tech lock now.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
We'll work on it or assign her a new.
How about the AEW TV lock?
The women's title lock.
Okay, sure.
Willow misses a moonsault.
TSN. TSN2 lock.
Oh, the TSN2 lock. Yeah. Yes. TSN.ca/live lock.
Actually, it'd be USA if she was on Collision.
Yeah, that too. You know, the other night on Collision, last night, I went on Crave to go.
The Crave lock, sorry.
The Crave lock as well. And I clicked on the USA Network feed in Canada to watch Collision, and this was like 9 o'clock or so, and it's halfway through the show. Can't rewind.
Oh.
It's just like the live feed. It's like you just can't rewind. I'm like, what a terrible player. So,
okay,
had to
you got to get on that. Hopefully, you should move over to a place that has my AEW access. Sounds like.
I went to IAEW. My IAEW. Willow misses the moonsault off the top. Tekla's spear is caught with a bait with the power bomb when out of nowhere, Sky Blue appears. placing Thekla's foot on the rope right in the view of the referee, who's just like, "Hey, what are you doing here?"
Well, when a referee is counting a pinfall, okay, they have really almost like a cone size, way of focus, and I don't know if he saw it exactly. Yeah,
I guess not. Maybe he was just so transfixed by Sky Blue. So the match continues, and Willow goes after Sky Blue, power bombs her on the floor, and then as she rolls into the ring, is instantly hit with Thekla's spear. And as Thekla goes for the curb stomp, Willow avoids it and wins with the backslide and catches her. I like the finish that she didn't just, it was a finish out of nowhere and just caught her. And big pop for Willow's win here. So this was the third title change on the show. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I imagine most people thought this was a likely outcome. I guess the question was if they would do something that would create the three-way scenario, but it looks as though they're just going with the one-on-one story with Willow and Mercedes, which is a strong direction. They called it back to the New Year's Eve show when she won the TBS title from Mercedes and showing Mercedes in the crowd as well, and then they put the graphic up on the screen.
I think it's cleaner storytelling. I would have loved if Thekla was a part of this because I think she would have added a different dynamic to it. But I don't hate the direction for it. I thought the match was very good. It was well wrestled. But I do think I was looking for more ways for Thekla to feel like the sort of overwhelming favorite because I think the title change was so expected here. And because Thekla is so undersized compared to Willow, I never really felt Willow was all that much in danger. I really like the ear work, and I would have loved to have seen her take more advantage of that or some sort of body part wound. I wouldn't have minded more Sisters of Sin involvement in this too. Really just to kind of stack the odds against Willow. But it was still overall good. It wasn't the sort of big moment that I think a win at Wembley would be. But that sort of was also out of their control, really.
Would they have really booed a Hart in the Bell Center?
Oh, you know what?
That's why they put Sky Blue out. They didn't want to risk it. The Conglomeration come out. They all celebrate. Willow puts the belt into a backpack, and we get the reaction shot with Mercedes as we now have another match official for August at All In. Dynamite in Detroit. In addition to the Trios title match, Renee will sit down with Copeland, Cage, and the Young Bucks as we start talking our way to London.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega, Kevin Knight, AEW Championship match closes the show. As both men are being introduced in the ring, Knight jumps Omega from behind and immediately takes the advantage, and he starts choking Kenny with his wrist tape. The crowd is on him. Fuck you, Kevin. They start later chanting Speedball's better, and Kevin would leap off the desk into a clothesline on Omega and would work on the knee for a portion of time. Then Excalibur says that Kenny Omega is only the second Canadian to hold the AEW championship. I was like, this company is only a couple of years old. That's a pretty good ratio. I would say that 2 Canadians. It's we're not the most populated in wrestling circles, but he is the first, he notes, to defend the belt in Canada.
Yes.
So yeah, this historic night here. Omega finally fights back with a Poison Rana, slowing down Knight. And he makes his first attempt for the One-Winged Angel, but it's countered, and we go into a Dragon Suplex in the ring, one on the edge, and then he snapdragons this dude on top of the desk. And Kenny is in charge now. He yells, "You will never be me, and you will never take what's mine," as he blasts Kevin Knight with these heavy knees and demands that Kevin Knight fight back. He's yelling, "More!" And then Omega... I just love when this guy gets into his boxing rhythm and just starts throwing punches because they look great every single time. And he's just snapping this jab at Kevin Knight and then proceeds with a sunset bomb, V-trigger. But Kevin Knight cuts him off and he manages the coast-to-coast drop kick. And Kevin gets both belts. It's the one belt to distract the ref, one belt to use as the weapon spot, which is creeping up into my most annoying spots that continually are used. So Bryce catches one, is distracted by the other, but Omega stops him, but ends up taking a Uranagi onto the belt, but Kenny kicks out. He goes to the UFO splash. Kenny gets his knees up, and then he just makes his comeback, knee strike, and lifts him up for the one-winged angel. And wait, I was so positive. He's like, oh, he's going to let him kick out of this. But it was a 3 count. This was the end. I was not expecting this finish when it occurred. My thought on this was like, good main event, but I didn't think this reached the level that I would think a lot of people thought this was going to be for Kevin Knight. It just, to me, did not... Like, I thought this would be match of the show. This was not my match of the show, and I didn't think it was one of Kenny's big pay-per-view matches. I'm curious what you thought, just in terms of what Kevin Knight, especially, if you felt he got a lot coming out of this, and what you thought of his performance.
No, I didn't think so either. And that is the sort of like bar we have set for this match, right? Like the reason to put Kevin Knight into this spot, other than maybe, for I'm sure a very strong match, but like
it's needed to be a career making, like, yeah. Oh my God, Kevin Knight lost, but this guy's the future type of feeling. And
yeah,
he did not feel like he was ready for that kind of accolade.
Well, I mean, the talent is there, and I thought he did really well, but he lacks the tenure for this role. Like in that, like, I don't know how many.
He doesn't have the poise yet, which will come, but he doesn't have that yet. To me,
he also like the crowd's just not used to seeing him in this like sort of capacity enough yet, and maybe that's what a match like this is there to achieve. But I thought it just kind of like fell short of like what they were hoping for. It lacked drama in its outcome. And I don't think they really came all that close into convincing you about any of those near falls. And this was also where, like, I think it wouldn't have been bad to take more advantage of the Callis family to just, like, signal to the crowd that, hey, like, this is a finish that's coming, and taking it away from them. I also felt like, look, Kenny was great. I thought, like, I think in all these big match performances, he's still showing that he's the high level performer that he is. And there was like almost him sort of like leading the match along, prodding Kevin Knight along to try to like step up to his level that I thought was Kenny at his most compelling here. I guess I just wish maybe some of the storyline reflected, some of that. And again, I know they were under some sort of like strange circumstances heading into this one, but I do think the storytelling could have like maybe helped the match a little bit more. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really lofty standard, but like that's the game. Like, this is, you're headlining the deepest pay-per-views in the entire industry. The standard should be super high. And I thought, like, very good match. Like, this certainly was not, I would never call this bad, but I thought for the objectives that we went over this week of what this match was designed to accomplish, mainly for Kevin Knight, I didn't think they crossed the finish line in that sense. But there was still a whole lot more, because after the match, Kevin Knight is just out of there, and the Death Riders, minus Ospreay, jump Kenny Omega. And the Young Bucks are out. They get beaten down because of the numbers disadvantage, and Claudio places a chair around Kenny's head. And now Will runs down to try and stop them. And Yuta's trying to calm him down and pull him to the side as he gives Claudio the signal.
Which is what Pac did to him for the Danielson attack. You remember?
Right, yes. But Ospreay is still able to intervene and sends all of the Death Riders out of the ring. So now Moxley enters, removes the chair from Ospreay, and puts it out of the ring. And he reveals the plastic bag that is back. The crowd is like, oh no. And all I'm going to say is, when I saw this plastic bag, I was like, we literally saw a man's head power drilled about an hour ago. I don't know if this plastic bag is like,
but that was the pariah of the underworld doing that. Okay, this is Will Ospreay, a man with a soul from the above world.
Yeah, well, I guess this bag was the mark of death here, and he hands the bag to Will. It's like, this was kind of stupid. It was like, are you going to murder this guy in the ring? Like, how's that going to work?
There goes your Wembley main event.
Like, kill him after you win the title. Like, don't kill the guy here. He's like, suffocate him until he's dead.
But people have survived the bag fine. Like it's a 1 week layoff at most.
So Will has the bag, and then Will was really trying to put on like the acting chops here, and then he had to have the big visual of ripping this bag, and this was a pretty sturdy bag. He eventually got it, but it took a few tugs. These plastic bags, underappreciated their girth. Okay, they're meant to hold a
What
lot.
grocery store did he get this from? I mean,
You don't need a double bag with this. Okay, this is you could put milk in this one. Okay, you could put your 3 bags of milk in this, and it'll be just fine. It's not going to fall. So he rips the bag and he decks Moxley, and then it was so funny. Like the Death Riders run in, and he just is like matrixing them all. They just all fly over the top. He hits a hidden blade to Pac, and then as the Death Riders have all left, he's got the knee pad with his patch, and he throws it away, and he eyes the championship off in the corner. Kenny's been dead for like 15 minutes at this point, just laying there, and he grabs the belt and he holds it in front and he presents it to Kenny. And Kenny takes it, and Will is not letting go of the grip immediately. But then they shake hands, and Will says, from this moment on, it's about you and me. And they go to celebrate, posing in the corners. I was like, we can't end with just happy-go-lucky Kenny and Will. And part of me thought it was like, okay, the swerve is going to be Will is going to do this. He's got the deadly plan, but it's on his terms. But in fact, it was the opposite, where they did this well, because Will is on the corner and they go in tight on him, so you don't see Kenny approaching, and he just lifts him, one-winged angel out of nowhere, and just lays out Will. And the Bucks are coming back in. They're surprised by this, but they go along with Kenny here. They just pose, and Kenny indicates that it's you were even thinking about using this bag on me, you bitch.
Which he was. He was considering it. He certainly hesitated before tearing the bag.
Yeah, well, I mean, fair play then to Kenny. Like, if you were thinking about murdering me, I'd have some problems. I think you have a one-winged angel on your bad neck coming your way at that point. Yeah, so it ends with Kenny just posing with the belt with the Bucks, and that's how we went off the show. Really like a kind of television segment to end this show, but really setting you in the direction of All In with these two. And what this means, like, this certainly was a shift in the Death Rider story that I didn't imagine coming so early. Like, we would have Will like dropping Moxley here as part of this segment.
Agreed. Like, if this is the actual breakup, which I suppose like the knee pad, kind of signifies, that was sort of a shock and surprise. And I would suggest like maybe one of the most relevant, I mean, the title changes were certainly relevant, but this, for the show made at least this interaction, worthwhile on the pay-per-view. And I thought it was really good. Like, it set up, I think, some unexpected tension from Omega side, and certainly leads him towards more of a heel direction for Wembley. I also like thought that there might have been the option of like turning Ospreay a bit more heelish. It would have worked tonight, but I don't think it would have made sense for Wembley. I mean, you want Ospreay going in as like about as pure of a babyface as you probably want, because he's going to be cheered as such. Meanwhile, Omega, I think, leaning more into this sort of like paranoid version of himself, like, will probably work as well, to elicit the amount of boos that he's probably going to get. So the closing segment was great. I wish I came out of this main event segment feeling like the Kevin Knight match was more relevant to the overall picture, because to me the sort of fact is, like, if you're trying to like just talk to somebody about like what was relevant to watch on the show headed towards All In, I don't know if the Night match was at all. And that
I didn't think that the Omega Night match eclipsed those first 3 matches that started off the pay-per-view. Like, at best, that would be number 4 for me.
Yeah. Like, for me, though, anyway, like, overall, this show, I don't think I can ever like call these bad shows, but like this
you're
was
almost
a big
you're
step
almost
down.
ranking them on an AEW scale, and on an AEW scale, this is definitely a thumbs in the middle show.
If you want to say that, yeah, like if it was any other scale of wrestling history, I feel like I'd still probably give this a thumbs up. But in the AEW scale, especially considering like how quiet these crowds were towards like the better sort of like final third of this show, or like a half even of this entire show, it kind of took away from, I think, a lot of the matches that were there. I think the build to this one was subpar, which maybe affected the crowd reaction tonight. And, you know, you kind of come out of it feeling like there were title changes, but were there like, did it feel like the type of show that you'd be raving about? I think far from it.
The first 90 minutes, I would be ready to rave about that. Like those 3 matches, I was like, okay, we're gonna get another like incredible show here, but there was still another like 4 or 5 hours after that fact. So, you know, that's kind of the thought was going in, and I would say coming out of it, like there were certainly aspects to criticize on this show overall. How do you feel about All In? Like with a month out, they're at about like 34,000 tickets now. So it's been very clear. Like the movement has come from this Omega Ospreay match basically becoming official because they saw this movement after Beach Break. But you know, the tickets are slowly moving, but overall, like, how do you feel about this show a month out with the few matches that are known so far?
Which are, let's maybe remind people what they are at this point. So we've got Adam Copeland, Christian Cage versus the Bucks. We got Willow Nightingale versus Mercedes Moné, Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. I think those are the only ones officially announced so far.
I think Jacques Rougeau is going to host an open challenge on the pre-show.
Yeah.
Challenge any fan, any hater.
Yeah, I mean,
Jamie hater.
Well, she'll probably be in a match too.
That's probably a 4th match. We can probably, that was all but said of with Demide and Dominion and the Brawling Birds for one.
Yeah, so we don't have like that much of an official, but like we know the directions. Like, you know, Takeshita versus Okada and Fletcher. I feel like that's very likely. And then, you know, I guess fill in the blank for the rest. We're really just kind of talking about whether or not we like the 3 title matches so far, and like
how many matches do you expect by the end for All
15.
In? 15.
How many were on this one?
On this show?
Yeah, Redemption.
This was a low end one because we only had the 1 pre-show match, so there
were
hard.
11 matches, so maybe that's a sign of things to come. For All In though, I would expect
not for All In
13.
Yeah, last year there were only 12, but they crammed a lot of people onto these, especially the pre-show. They just load up these pre-shows with multi-mans. So,
yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, that's going to wrap up our review of AEW Redemption. You know, we had lots of post-wrestling representation at the show. Kate from Montreal was there on behalf of Post. Happy birthday to Braden Harrington, who celebrated his birthday with Davey at Montreal, as well. Mike Murray going along for the trip as well.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Hope they had a good time.
I'm sure they're still having a good time as we're speaking.
Listen
right
to
now.
the Poison Rana boys talk.
Poison Rana, yeah.
Poison Rana, yeah. Listen to their podcast feed to I'm sure hear them talk about it. They'll probably be discussing it on Tuesday on Up Next as well. Also, Kate from Montreal will be joining me this Wednesday on Rwanda Dynamite, as John Pollock will be off on a much-deserved vacation. So it'll be Jack Wannon joining me on Rwanda Raw, Kate from Montreal joining me on Rwanda Dynamite this week.
Yes, and I will be hot tagging in on Friday as Way gets Friday night off, as I will be doing Rewind to SmackDown with our man, Neil Flanagan, who may or may not be dressed as the Painmaker on Friday night with me.
So I will not be doing a show with you, John, until
SummerSlam.
Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm coming back on Wednesday to do episodes 1 and 2 of WWE Unreal. And
that's right.
What a pair of episodes that we have to talk about. And we're going to sign off by playing this clip for everyone to find out the context of on Wednesday.
Everybody, from a critical standpoint, was like, I want John to retire at WrestleMania. Why? WrestleMania will sell out on its own. Let's do a random Saturday night in the worst financial quarter of the company so we can bring Q4 up, because I know we got some good business.